Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jamie Goodrich, the Director of the Humanities Center here at Wayne State, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this, our first Brown Bag of the new year. And today we have a presentation by Jose Cuello. He set the foundations for the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies as a unique community of research, teaching, learning, university programming, and community outreach. His mission is to see Wayne State transform itself into a fully green university. He has a unified theory of the rise and fall of civilizations that he will publish under the title of Human Imperatives, Earthly Consequences. And he has received awards for exceptional service from President Roy M. Wilson, Latin Americans for Social and Economic Development, and the Hispanic Latino Commission of Michigan. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that he's been a very good friend of the center over the years, having given 12 presentations in various of our programs over the past 10 years. So today it is a great pleasure that we welcome Professor Jose Cuello to give us our inaugural talk for this new year. And I'll let you take it away, Jose.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank Professor Jamie Goodrich, the new director of the center, for hosting the presentation, and of course Walter Edwards was present. You know, I have to say this aside. I think of the Humanities Center that we should really rename it the Walter Edwards Center for the Studies of Humanity. So I'm going to be putting a proposal for that. Before I start, I want to note that I have been called the Humanities Center Prophet of Doom. But I believe that the bigger the challenge, the bigger the opportunity. And this is proven by the topic of my talk today. And again, as Jamie said, it was part of my personal campaign to turn Wayne State into a fully green university. By way of introduction, before I talk about the role of the universities in this issue, I want to make seven points to illustrate the crisis before I come to the proposed solution. The first is that it's clear that climate change is real. We see the reports of major environmental catastrophes in the news media on a daily basis. Right now, California is being drowned in mud and rain, and when it's not in fire. The major journals have published special editions on the crises. Newspapers and magazines have permanent climate change sections. The video documentaries are numerous. A number of them can be found on YouTube even. The Environmental Protection and Research Agencies of the United Nations and the United States have issued reports that fill a small library. I can mention 4 of the organizations now, but I'm going to skip over them for brevity. I do want to note that the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change has just had its 27th annual meeting called COP27 this past November in Egypt. Climate change then has rapidly risen to the top 5 concerns in the polls of public consciousness. The most alarmed, the most alarmed are the young people, naturally, who now believe they face a bleak future. Even major corporations now believe that their future profits will be found in green. Point number 2, yet our political leaders and public institutions are acting as if climate change is just one of many problems on their agendas. So on news and social media, they treat the ecological crisis as less important than a street crime or a sports event. Our universities are training people for job skills that were in demand, I would really say, in the 1950s. I started my undergraduate education in 1965, and we're still doing the same thing. So I'm wondering, what is worse is that climate change is only one dimension of the global ecological crises. Human beings are destroying the entire web of life on which our very existence depends. So it's a multifaceted thing. We are not just facing an increasing violent world climate, the land and water systems are also degraded and poisoned. Now, the scientists tell us that we have reached the tipping point at which humanity will cause the 6th extinction if we don't take drastic action. Earth will lose most of the other species from the bottom of the sea to the top of the highest mountains. The last human survivors, I'm sorry to say, will starve to death on a bare hilltop. Again, I'm optimistic, okay? So don't take everything as negative. Point number 4, as Professor Goodrich has stated, I have done numerous presentations at the Humanities Center and explained the causes of our existential crises. And I believe that it's the cause of our existential crises is the unnatural human civilizations that have been created and maintained by men who lust for power and wealth. My personal conclusion is that male greed created the phenomena that we call our greatest achievement, which I would say it's our biggest mistake. And I have other scholars that agree with that, but we're not very popular. We cannot justify the destruction of the planet with a false ideology of material progress. I mean, it's look at what's happening. I can give you examples of that, but I'm going to skip to the next point. Point number 5 is that the global solution, it has to be global. It cannot be local. I mean, for example, Wayne State has a sustainability program, but it's about the internal sustainability of Wayne State. They might be testing a little bit of river water, but not much doing with the world situation. Global solutions can only come from the world's governments, corporations, and public institutions. I mean, I recycle like crazy, but then I learned that my recycling material is being put in a dump along with the garbage because they don't have the processes to complete the work. We face the monumental task of repurposing our universities to make the protection and preservation of a habitable planet their most important vision. Even Cory Booker, during this campaign for president said, everything we do from now on will have to be judged through the prism of climate change. So point number 6 is minus a proposal for how our national and world universities can prevent the Titanic from sinking before we make more lifeboats and possibly a new ark with a few animals and plants. We're at a desperate stage. So this is point number 7. This is a call for an unprecedented thought and action. Never before have we developed what I call a species consciousness that has guided us to collective species action. I have a little essay called the Principle of Human Unity, and I believe that since we all share the same biology and our cultural differences are relatively superficial, that we need to come together. We must take the impossible leap now. Okay, so that's my little introduction. I hope I'm okay on time. I'm now going to the actual presentation of, the title of that is Greening Our Universities to Survive the Global Ecological Crises. And my point is that the world's universities can secure an Earth still habitable by humans. And I've got a 12-point presentation here. And I start by saying universities will, number 1, constitute a rapid response system of innovation and communication that is embedded in over 4,000 universities and colleges in the United States alone. If you look at the whole world, there are 31,000 localities covered by universities and colleges on the planet. And my point here, point number 1, is that they are the most secure, lowest cost, fastest, and most depoliticized alternative to creating new green-centered institutions from the ground up. If we don't look at the universities, then the federal government and state government, all the other governments are going to create their own little institutions, and we have already the mechanisms here. We just need to retool them the way that the nation retooled the auto, airplane, and other industries to win World War II. People have been saying that in order to look at the ecological problem, we do have to go on a wartime footing, war against climate change and the environmental destruction. Point number 2, and some of these points may be a little bit overlapping, but it's because they're part of a whole integrated system. Point number 2 is universities will lead the research and policy collaborations with governments, corporations, and foundations within and across national boundaries to address the complex scientific components of the Anthropocene ecological crises. Anthropocene is now what archaeologists, anthropologists, and people studying the environment have given to the new age in which humans are now the major driver of the natural environment. Again, climate change is a deceptive code term for the myriad ways in which our modern civilization is poisoning the entire web of life on the planet. So we need big solutions. We just can't recycle in our kitchen. So universities will also retool their powerful professional networks from the presidents to the labor unions to exchange green information and coordinate green programs across the nation and around the globe. It's incredible that, for example, I was looking at the Humanities website, and Humanities Center is actually part of a national organization of humanities centers. So, I mean, if you look at any university, there's incredible number of connections all over the place that we can now repurpose. And what's going to happen from this is that universities will play, this is point number 4, play a major role in designing a new system of production and employment. We just can't go on with the same economic system driven by profit and marketing and consumerism. What's going to happen is that everyone involved in the greening of education and work will acquire a dramatic sense of purpose. Most of us, if you look at the job market and people jumping all over from job to job and the dissatisfaction of workers not going back to work, it's because they have meaningless jobs that are just drone jobs. Here, when you're trying to save the earth, I don't care if you're fixing a plumbing problem, you're saving the planet. So, man, we're going to be really motivated. The universities, number 5, will employ the experts. We already have the experts and we'll hire more in the hard sciences, social sciences, and humanities who can conceive and design the strategies for achieving the green transformation. And this is the green transformation of what? And this point is of all our social relationships. We have to transform the way that we relate. I refer to class, gender, etc. later on, but our social relationships have to be restructured into a huge collaborative effort. And this will accompany it's necessary because if we're retooling the technological workings of the human societies, we have to retool our social relationships. Point number 6, universities will transform all of their internal operational priorities. For example, professors at Wayne are paid so little that $1,000 bonus per semester for a couple of years would get them to teach green across the curriculum. We could teach green across the curriculum. We often talk about writing across the curriculum. I've often argued for critical thinking across the curriculum. We can do all of those, but teach green across the curriculum. Wayne can start giving degrees in green degrees and certificates. We could lead the world in this, and we could set the model. University campuses can become dynamic laboratories for testing new green technologies. So, the point of that is, the result of that is universities will produce a new green ideology to reintegrate us into nature. One of the problems that happened with the evolution of human species is that we can see a number of technological revolutions that have led us to where we are today, climate change in a predatory capitalist economy. It began with a few technological changes, the development of the brain by the use of fire, and we became fully human by maybe 70,000 years ago or so. And then we had the invention of tools that began to do a kind of nature-friendly exploitation of the environment. But then we hit on natural surpluses like salmon and buffalo. And what happens is that when we get a surplus beyond survival in the history of the human species, greedy men have always risen to take power control over the band, the tribe, the chiefdom, the kingdom, the nation state, the monarchy, the modern nation state. And so in addition to those political revolutions, we have the other technological revolutions, not only agriculture, but then the industrial revolution and the super industrial revolution, and now the digital revolution. So all of these have led us to this. So what I'm arguing here is that when we were hunters and gatherers, our basic ideology throughout the world, all hunters and gatherers had an ideology that said, we are part of nature and we have to cooperate among the group to survive ourselves. We have to be collaborative with our relationships and with the earth. And that's what we have to get back to. Not going back to the hunters and gatherers, but that philosophy can be adapted to our current situation. So universities, therefore, are the conceptual power centers. They are already a main intellectual generator of public political philosophy and policy. So what's going to result if we do the right job is all of society will acquire a green mentality. This is what Cory Booker was talking about when everything has to be now filtered through the lens of climate change. Thinking green together will be the new norm. Point number 8. Universities will shape the core direction of our whole education system to inform and train the public across all social divisions. we really have to do away with tuition at the university level, and we have to reform the way that we pile up core curriculum courses to students who don't want to take them. We have to reinvent the university, but we also have to reinvent secondary and primary education. In my view, a long time ago, because I've studied this problem, is that what happens in America with the educational system now for decades is that after the third grade, the primary school becomes the local jail, that the students act as if they were in a forced learning environment. The high school becomes the state penitentiary, and the university becomes the big house. And instead of making students smarter, our antiquated system of education is actually dumbing a lot of students. So what's happened is that once we get this thing done, everybody will acquire a new green way of thinking and living, and it's up to us to lead the way in doing this. And so again, a universal green species consciousness. I mean, we have to think our first identity has to be human. It cannot be male, it cannot be woman, it cannot be ethnic, it cannot be class. Our first identity has to be human, and we have to collaborate with each other. This is required for our survival as individuals and as a group. Point number 9. Universities will tap and complement the creativity of their local communities. We're here embedded in Detroit. We have, I would say, even 1,000 connections with the society that we don't even are aware of, because unless we take a survey, but it's incredible how we are embedded in this local community and even in Michigan. And so this is also true across the planet with any higher institution. And one of the things that the universities will do is that we will reorganize our outreach programs and organize public forums and collaborations. One of the things that I have to point out is that the hierarchies of power that divide all civilized societies, which are gender hierarchies of power, age hierarchies of power, class hierarchies of power, ethnic and racial hierarchies of power, and when those are not enough, we invent a few more, that this system of hierarchy of power keeps the creativity and the inventiveness of the 99% or the various structures of the 99%, the creativity suppressed. There are Einsteins out there who are doing drone jobs simply because they were born into the wrong class or the wrong gender or the wrong whatever. So we have to liberate all of that. And so universities can invite their communities onto campus for participating in debates with members of the university communities, but also special interests that might be affected. Point number 10, and I hope you're still with me, because I'm trying to not go too fast, but that's just the way I am, and Walter knows. Point number 10, universities will act as a resource for their graduates who will coordinate the global campaigns by environmental groups, corporations, churches, public media, foundations, schools, and private citizens to carry out the everyday logistics necessary for solving our existential crises. We have to think that, look how many people universities have trained throughout the world and where they are in management positions and creative positions, in positions of leadership in which their intellect can be used to tackle the problem, and they are already alumni. They're alumni. They think of, I'm a Wayne State alumni, I'm an Ann Arbor alumni, MSU alumni, I'm this alumni. People identify with their institutions of higher learning, and they know how to access them when they need them. So this will be a whole integrated thing. Point number 11, universities will slice the Gordian knot of political gridlock in and among the world's capitals. The new green university, if we can call it that, as a collective identity, can give the imperative institutional transformation a collective name. That's it, and it would create legitimacy. The new green university would have legitimacy, the legitimacy of the media effect of the example of what we're doing to convince the warring factions, political factions, to turn their swords into ecological plowshares. We have to impact the political system because the political system is by definition not paying attention to us. I mean, that's why people of all colors, especially whites, but everybody else we have no faith in our government anymore. So we have to regenerate that. And that's point number 12. Universities will regenerate the ideology of democracy throughout the planet. We cannot do it without that. if we keep the same hierarchies of power, the same centers of power. If you go on YouTube right now, where the Humanities Center has a website, and look up wealth inequality, you will see that in the last 40 years, the wealth in this nation has gone skyrocketing upward, and we have been impoverished. So the self-transformation of our universities into a green power will create unprecedented opportunities for solving the pressing issues of inequality of wealth and environmental justice, and access to dignity of life and purpose for all members of our species. This is basically a takeoff on the Green New Deal that people have been promoting. Okay, in conclusion, human beings have been able to overcome their deepest conflicts of self-interest only when faced with a common existential crises. We're waiting for the Martians to attack so we can come together. Well, I'm not sure the Martians will want to come. So we have now a forever planetary crises as our global village faces the sixth extinction. Universities possess the greatest resources for uniting us all. And an important note, which I think we have mentioned, is Wayne State University is currently searching for a transformational president. But the strategic plan of the Board of Governors and the mission statement of the search committee define transformational as doing the same thing over and over again, only better. We will have a better faculty. We will have a better student body. We will have better physical plan. I would like the board to listen to my message so that I can become not a prophet of doom, but a prophet of hope. And Wayne State is already prepared. We already have the green and gold colors. And we are the warriors who aim higher. So what are we waiting for? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that stimulating and lively talk, Professor Cuello. I'd like to open the floor to questions. You can type them into the chat, or you can, go ahead and put up your hand or just unmute. I have a question, but I want to wait and see what other people have to say. So I'll give some space for that.
Yeah, that would be great.
Can I talk? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
It's like Andre Furtado.
Yeah, well, the first thing I think we ought to do is to have Jose Cuello run for the Board of Governors. So that ought to be a prime object of this particular Zoom. Now,
I would have to be corrupt.
Let me say some things, Jose.
Yeah.
The political opposition to climate change is occurring all over the world.
Yes.
Okay? Not just in the U.S. And I don't think the governments are going to move quickly. And I think we know that from the Paris Accord issues, from the Montreal biodiversity meetings, that these guys talk a lot, but they don't do a damn thing. Excuse my language. All right. They don't do a damn thing. So who is going to do it? It's going to have to be the people. Now, how are we going to get that? Because there are movements in opposition to what you're doing. For example, you want to green Wayne State University, which is great. But in Florida, they want to anti-woke Florida universities, and they put a governor in charge of one of the universities, I don't know which one it is, to do just the opposite of what you're doing. So
Yeah.
how do we get around these issues? I think people have to be educated. Half the politicians in this country, some of them pay lip service to climate change, don't do anything. The others tell you there is no climate change, okay? And half the people believe that. So one of the serious goals of what you're trying to do is to engage with communities, not so much here, but probably more in the South, so people begin to understand the politicians are running a number on them. This movement is not going to come from the governments anyway. I've studied this. I studied this till I'm blue in the face. It's going to have to come from the people.
That's why I'm saying that universities have to take the lead, because we have to bypass the blocks that the government corrupted by the money that's flown into them. Yeah. And also we have to we have to change the inertia of society as a whole. People are right now the citizens of the United States, we're supposed to be the most advanced democracy in the world, most people don't even know who their local representatives are, and they don't have the time to meet with them. We're so busy just surviving and then being distracted by all the toys that, we always put climate change in the back, because the human nature is such that we never really react to a crisis until it's upon us. But this is a different type of crisis that we have to see. But you're right. That's one of my points, is that universities have to reach into the localities, take the creativity of people. And, Donald Trump has been accused of, excuse me for not being a Trumpist, but Donald Trump has been accused of many crimes, but his biggest crime is setting back the ecological response agenda for 6 years or more. And while we're busy worrying about what we're going to do with the Donald, we're not paying attention to climate change. The social media, the news, when you go on to your nightly broadcast or the online 24-hour programs, their first thing should be tell us about climate change. They should have climate change at the top of the scale, just like we did in World War II with radio. That this is the main thing we're interested in, not the local street fight or whatever, And I left a major human rights organization that I was associated with 30 years, because they simply were not moving to defend the planet. And I was telling them there can't be no human rights if there's no planet. So you're right, we face major opposition and deniers. I mean, it's not just election deniers, like you said, it's ecological crisis deniers.
I see Iris has her hand up, but I just want to build on that question, because I was thinking about Florida too. I was thinking about Ron DeSantis, the governor, and how the reports that he's attempting to take over New College, which is, one of the most progressive colleges in Florida. But he's replaced the board of governors with enough people, and they're threatening to introduce a conservative curriculum and make it a center of conservative education, and it's being led by people from Hillsdale, which is very close to home for us. And so, I think you're right, Jose, that the universities are a wonderful resource for this, but there's a battle for the university itself, and so how does that function or factor into this? Because it's not, it's because of that issue. I think that's a real threat for all of us, that what happens in Florida could be imported to other states. And then we'll go to Iris and then our director emeritus. All right. Iris, did you want to say something, ask your question?
Yes. Hello, I'm Iris. And I guess my question is, I hear talk of making the universities green, but I guess is my opinion, like, where are any plans or any discussion about going lower in age as far as getting the youth involved with our efforts? Junior high school students, high school students, starting young, because they are our future and we're leaving the planet to them. So we need to also consider starting with them.
Yeah, one of the points that I'm making to the Board of Governors is that the grammar schools are actually ahead of Wayne State in teaching about the ecology. But that one of the points that I'm making is that universities are located in 31,000 localities throughout the world, and we're deeply embedded in those communities, but we have not done enough to reach out to them and share our resources with them. So we have to, it's absolutely necessary, as you're saying, that we go into the grammar schools and the high schools, and we have to create a pipeline from kindergarten or even pre-kindergarten to the graduation as doctors or professionals. Everybody has to be trained whole life. It has to be a whole life training. It cannot just be episodic. And for example, Wayne State has a sustainability program. It's got several components, but they're all very unintegrated. They're weak. For example, we do have climate change warriors. We have some green warriors who are students, and they're supposed to be going to all the departments and convincing them that to turn green, but I haven't seen a green warrior come up to me and tell me anything so far. I think it's a small group so far, but you're right, exactly right. This will have the whole society integration.
I had one other question. Earlier, it was mentioned as far as, the universities, going back to that again. And I was just wondering, like, the price of tuitions, creating these programs, is there like a safety net in place to keep the price of tuition from skyrocketing when there's, how you were saying, these greed and power structures want to keep hold of power. Like, so if we're focusing on, changing the world and making everything better, getting that climate justice, what's keeping people accountable from price gouging with the tuition so that people can get certified and trained?
You've hit on an extremely important point, extremely important. First of all, there should be no tuition. Secondly, students should be paid to go to school, but that schooling should not be the traditional schooling. It should be focused on critical thinking. We don't teach critical thinking across the curriculum. We just lecture students and book them to death and test them to death, and they come out drones, and only the few nerds who actually want to take advantage of the system actually get a real education. Let me tell you that I went to a school as an undergraduate in Chicago, University of Illinois in Chicago, the Circle campus, when it was first founded in '69, and I had no tuition for my 4 years as an undergraduate, '69 to anyway, and then I went, no, '65 to '69. Then I went to UC Berkeley for 12 years from '69 to '81, and there was no tuition there either. At one time, state governments paid tuition, almost full tuition for all students going to that. And decisions were made after I graduated in '81 that somehow we will not pay for the mass education of our people. We will begin charging tuition. The federal government still supplies some support, but not enough. It was mostly coming from the state governments, and they pulled out completely. And so now it's impossible. I would not go to a university today because of the cost. I just could not afford it. And I see students taking on life debts of, the average now is probably about 40,000 or higher when they graduate, even though they worked. What I see is students working 40 hours to pay for an education, but then they don't have time to study. And then they're giving these routine traditional lectures and books. What student who has the time to read 4 or 5 books for every damn course that they take? I could go on that, but you're exactly right. We don't need tuition. In fact, we should have immediate tuition relief and free everybody of debt, and then obligate them to do something for society. But you got some really good points there. See, and that's the kind of creativity that I want to see coming from the community and not from intellectuals like me.
I believe Dr. Edwards had his hand up, so we'll go to him next.
Well, thank you again, Jose, for a profound talk. I took down my hands because between you and Iris, you seem to have been answering my question. One of the suggestions I was going to make was that this is perhaps a very good moment for some of your ideas to be implemented, because we have a president who presents himself, and I believe that it is true, as being very humanitarian. And we have a provost who by his actions indicate a certain sense of community and a sense of wanting to do what is right. And as you have said, you have green warriors and other people appointed by the university to be concerned about climate change. I wondered if you would be willing or interested in suggesting to the provost that one of the assistant or associate provosts should have, as part of his or her title, a responsibility to implement climate change issues. I don't know how that will be worded, but certainly if the university is au fait with what seems to be a very important moment in the history of the world. I mean, California, I'm sort of getting ready to go out with my scimitar to California to fight the floods that are taking place there, because my daughter is there and I want to make sure she's okay. because of global warming, which is part of the climate behavior. So it might be a good idea for you to suggest to the provost and the president that one of the officials of this university has a statement about our interest in climate change and saving the world. One of the officials, in addition to having academic responsibilities, could also have as part of his or her portfolio an interest in implementing ideas that are propitious for climate change.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I have to agree with both you, and I think Professor Goodrich mentioned it, or someone did that I think it's you, that we now have a partially transformational president. I mean, Wilson brought in two incredible provosts. One was Keith Whitfield, who started the process, and now Mark Hornblue is continuing and developing it even more. These were the two provosts that the first provost that I had back in '89 listened to me. After that, I got shut out of the office and I couldn't reach them. But Whitfield and Hornblue have welcomed me into their circle, to so to speak, and I have addressed this issue with the provost. And what I'm doing now is that he knew about this, and he thought he might be here, but he's not. So I'll let him know that it'll be on YouTube. But I have been addressing the search committee. I went to the first two listening sessions and integrated into a proposal to the search committee how just my transformation, but that added, what else do you have to do in order to make a green university out of Wayne State? And you have to do the diversity thing. You have to straighten out the administration. You have to have a campus environment that is supportive of its workers and students, that their mental health has to be taken care of. You have to have more community outreach. So I have a whole list of things that I have put as a formal plan. And then I have taken the daring step of contacting the secretary of the Board of Governors, and she agreed to send this plan to all of the Board of Governors, not just the search committee, because I didn't want to be filtered by a search committee. And I think right now my main goal is, if we do not hire a transformational president that really makes climate change and all these other issues their goal, then we're going to lose the race. Ann Arbor and all the other institutions are moving already in that direction, and we can take the lead in this and become a leader. And the other thing is that it would solve our financial problems, because money would just pour into us, and also the students would be coming in droves. Students would be coming in droves to take this green program. That's what they want. So I think you're right on, Walter, and you're still sharp.
I see a question from Clarissa in the chat, so I'll read it out. Which social media platform or website do you find to be the most useful for connecting with people, addressing these eco issues, and spreading helpful information and organizing events?
If you, I'm a dinosaur when it comes to technology, so all I use is my cell phone for text and calls, and then I use my computer for finding websites. And what I've done, for example, you can go to Google and Google climate change and see all kinds of programs. But then I've been logarithmed by one of my search engines, Firefox, and it has a service called Pocket. And apparently they're sending me all these articles that I can download from their website into my bibliography. But I found that, for example, I didn't know there was a Earth Day program here in Roanoke, where I live, and they invited various local groups. And I went down there, and there was two short blocks full of tables of local groups working in the environment, and also issues like transit. And I collected all their literature, and I came home with 2 bags full, and I'm trying to put a list of organizations together. But I signed up for some of their email list. So I do a lot of stuff with email and then searches on the internet, but I do not use social media other than email and chats like this. My research and my other involvements prevent me from, for example, Facebook has a lot of problems. And I just don't want to get into the other ones because I have tons of emails already to service, and I don't want to distract myself from my central attention. And what I'm hoping is that as I talk to other groups, I will be part of their networks. I'm trying to embed myself in several networks, and I'm also trying to create new networks. For example, I'm trying to work with a Latina women's organization in Southwest Detroit that might be interested in setting up a committee on climate change in addition to the other traditional committees that they have. And I'm talking to a couple of social work agencies about doing something like that, applying for grants to train the community for that. So I'm sort of like, I'm low tech, but I'm trying to advance at my own pace to do this stuff.
Thank you. Other questions? Oh, Clarissa responds, I can certainly understand that. Chuckle, thank you both. Smiley face. And would the Southwest group welcome non-Latinas?
Oh yeah. See, Latinas are more diverse than the American population because we're made up of a whole bunch of Europeans, a whole bunch of Native Americans, and a whole bunch of Africans, and we're all mixed. And so we have that culture. And over at the Latino Studies Center since 1971, when it was established, we have always been diversity. We have always been welcoming. We have always been inclusive. And so the center, my center that I directed for 12 years, was the leading diversity organization within Wayne State. Not even Africana Studies was doing anything like we does, and not even the humanities program. So yeah, I am. The principle of human unity is that why can't we get together and work on our problems instead of fighting each other and killing each other?
It's a great question. Other questions or comments? I saw a note in the chat that maybe the first interlocutor has some additional points to make. If other people don't want to put in their 2 cents or ask a question.
Well, seeing that nobody's saying something, I'll put my 2 cents in. My background is chemical engineering, and in my doctorate, I did a lot of energy work. So I understand what's going on in a lot of these things. And I think the universities need to challenge the government in terms of their climate change, quote unquote, energy policies. Let me give you an example. We're moving towards electrification. The question is why? The ostensible reason is, well, we want to decrease pollution, and people are buying it. They're buying electric cars by the droves. But what happens? I mean, what does that do? It takes the pollution from the cities, but it doesn't decrease the pollution overall if they're still using fossil fuels to drive those electric cars, which is what they're doing. They got people to buy electric cars, but they're not decreasing the fossil fuels used to generate the electricity. So to what extent is that really helping climate change? It's only helping decrease pollution in the cities. Let me give you another example. They're telling people, don't use gas ranges, use electric ranges. Well, people would have to put a new investment. And they say, well, you have indoor pollution. That's easily solved by good ventilation. Improve your ventilation in your home. And the problem is, for every BTU of electrical heat you use, you're wasting 2 BTUs of heat that go out there. So you're really using 3 times the amount of heat energy in going from gas to electricity. So I began wondering, why are they doing this? Why are they pushing this? Is it maybe there's an ulterior motive? Maybe the motive is, if you generate electricity, you can use any fuel you want, however dirty. People won't care as long as you're getting the electricity. So this should be exposed. Is the idea here that they can use coal and whatever tar sands or whatever it is that they want to use? I mean, that's what I wonder. Why are they pushing these things when there's so many better ways to do it? Go renewable, but don't tell people to get rid of their gas stoves, which are 3 times more efficient than electric ovens. So these are the kind of things the universities have to do to get out there in the public and challenge. Nobody's challenging, for example, the policy that moved from a gas stove to an electric stove to decrease in-home pollution, when in fact you're increasing the polluting gases from energy production 3 times as much. Nobody mentions that, and I'm stunned. I mean, the university should have just jumped on that. They haven't done it. So, Jose, you need to be the lightning rod talk to the people in chemistry, talk to the people in engineering, and tell them, hey, go out there and spread the word. If you can't get them to do it, damn well, I'll do it.
Well, I'm gonna have to put $1,000 per professor in my pocket so that I could actually get them to listen. But listen, Andre, it's deeper than that. Suppose we went totally green, which is impossible, or without the coal and oil fuels, and we found new sources of energy like wind, solar, etc. We would still be heating up the planet. We'd still be heating up the planet with our devices. You know what's happening, for example, computer, whatever it is that we're storing the cloud in, we have a huge cloud now that we think it's so simple, it's paperless and it's beautiful, etc. It is taking a huge amount of energy to keep those machines going, to keep those memory things going, to keep those things working. We created a new pollution force of heat and drawing up of bad energy that is continuing to create the problem. I was super pleased with the fact that the Humanities Center is now on YouTube, but now it's drawing energy, to maintain those websites. And I once saw a film about how the oceans are heating up, the fish are dying or migrating, and there's a lot of problems. But then the guys doing the documentary said, "Oh my God, we feel so guilty wasting so much energy on our cameras and the travel that we did to show the problem we added to the problem." And so we're in a dilemma. And that's why I'm saying we need to liberate the imagination of everybody in the world to think about this issue. We have to do away with class divisions, gender divisions, and all other divisions. We have to create networks of collaborations that are focused on saving everyone, not just a few. And the last comment I want to make, if nobody has any other questions, that humanity is an extremely flexible species. We have inhabited the jungles of the Amazon, the deserts of whatever they are, the ice situation, the Eskimos. How can Eskimos live on ice? I mean, it's incredible. And we have been out of space. But if we destroy the web of life, there ain't going to be no food to hunt. So let's get to it. Oh, and the one thing I would do is I may start picketing the fab myself until I get more people to join it. Because they were when I retired when I became emeritus, I wanted to have an office on campus because that gives me an internal status rather than me thinking, oh, Professor Cuello, you live in Royal Oak. What are you doing here? No, I have an office here, and I have a right as emeritus and an awarded professor. I have a right to address the Board of Governors with some credentials. But they didn't want to give me an office. They said, oh, no, we don't have space over there. And then I said, well, I'm going to camp outside in the middle of the campus throughout the year with my little tent and my little desk and my little computer. And people are going to ask me, why are you out here? And I'm going to tell them, oh, we found an office for you. So, I mean, you just have to come up with the right arguments.
Jose, I don't know if you're watching the chat, but Iris has added on to the examples that we've been discussing. She says, what about the community that would not be able to afford the price for electric cars? What about the renters that would not be able to afford, upgrades such as solar panels? Households with the majority of income is going to utilities. And then Lisa Kaufman has now added, awesome talk, Jose, and great points, everyone. I would just add a kudos to the Wayne State Farmers Market. Creating spaces for local economies and social interaction seems like an important concrete step to move away from mass consumption, long supply chains, et cetera.
Yeah, and one of the things on both of those points is that we have to lower our consumptions. I mean, we are now using Ghana as a dumping ground for all the extra clothing that not even Salvation Army will take. And so we have to, one of the key points of Reconstruction society will be decentralization, because the cities are just too big and require too many services, where we need local communities to be more self-supportive and more autonomous. Going back to the small model, cities do nothing but concentrate the amount of garbage and sewage that goes out back to nature. We need to smaller communities. human cooperation is always taking place in smaller groups better than in larger groups. When you get to a larger group, some chief takes over and starts dictating to us what to do. And the other thing about, see, part of the Green New Deal would be to have better paying jobs for people so that, and also we need, see, one of the things that's happened in America is, I'm not a communist. I think communism is a bad system, but so is capitalism. There's two bad systems, so you can't go one to the other. And when you say let's share, you can't be. I don't want to be accused of being a communist because we have to say let's share. The minimum wage right now, if it had been kept up with inflation, would be $25 an hour. That's a living wage. 15 is not, and so we have to restructure. Again, in the last 40 years, the inequality of wealth in America has skyrocketed so much that it's the most inequality that we have had historically, even before the Great Depression. So we need to go back to regulation. Look at my last point here is there's so little regulation, and I mean just basically humanitarian control, that Donald Trump should have been in jail decades ago for the way that he screwed suppliers and people, etc. But the unregulated economy allowed him to do this, and that's because there's a lot of other greedy people who want to benefit from the same system. So we have to have a sense of justice, social justice, a sense of caring for each other, and a lot of these issues will go away. They will be solved because we have to.
Thank you for that. I think we've got a few more minutes left in our allotted time. If anyone else wants to share a thought or a question.
Yes, I will say to Jose, you hit the nail on the head when you talked about decentralization. And the reason why I say that is green energy is really distributed. Waterfalls, it's all over the place. Whereas fossil energy and the way we've organized ourselves is focused and concentrated. And like you said, the waste generator is also concentrated. And the best ways to reorganize our living so that we live in distributed systems, like the indigenous do. And if you looked at some of the data, they connect climate change with biodiversity. And they've also said the indigenous are responsible for 80% of the biodiversity we have in the world, whereas the civilized are only responsible for 20. So we can learn a lot from them. And one of the key things is we have to change the way we live. So we're decentralized so we can use distributed renewable energy better. That's the key. Where there's sun, all right, let's have a community there. Where there's hydroelectricity, let's have a community there. Whereas now, to do things the way we're doing them now, we have to use fossil fuels and then transmit them over distances. So that's a very key point to make, and thank you for making it. Decentralization. Thanks.
And a related point is that we have to go back to valuing human labor at all levels, because we've gone so technological that, I mean, I can't stand it when I go to the supermarket and there's these self-checkout things, or when you call in to talk to a person at one of the services that you have, and it's a robot answering you and screening you. And we need to go back to when we were hunters and gatherers and early agriculturalists, even under monarchies, most of the energy used to run society was human. And then once agriculture came in, we started using animals more. And then once the Industrial Revolution, we took the really wrong path in a fork and went mechanical. And that's when we started using all kinds of fossil fuels to poison the environment. And we thought it was progress. Then we thought every new great idea is progress. We're making so progress. We should be living in a heaven right now, but we're living in an artificial world that's separated from nature, and we are natural beings, and yet we're living in a total artificial environment. So we have to go back to human and nature, and that sounds like an idealistic thing, but it's the only way to do it. We have to finally we have to find a non-violent solution. We cannot do it with revolution the way they have done it in the past, where it's armed conflict over this or that. We have to avoid that. It has to be a Gandhi, Martin Luther King type of persuasion, where you do the sit-outs and whatever, where you do the public demonstrations, non-violent ones, and now there's a new group called Indivisible that has created a new system for pressing legislators. And, there's a lot of creative ideas there. We just have to think globally and put all the solutions together and organize them into a working dynamic set of solutions. But it's idealistic, and I'm divided. I'm optimistic about survival of humanity, but we don't know when the catastrophe will take place. It could take, some say, oh, we don't have to worry for another 100 years when we're going to be living on an island. And others say, well, it's 50 years. But the way the system is connected, the web of life is connected, one part failing could bring down the whole thing. So we could be facing a total collapse of this ecological system tomorrow. So, we just have to do our best. And finally, hey, instead of panicking, if you got a sense of ethics about you, if you know that love is a solution to greed, then you can live your life peacefully with your sense of ethics and be satisfied that you've done your best. And stop worrying, be active and stop worrying. Enjoy your sandwich, enjoy whatever you have, enjoy your love life. Don't let this crisis overwhelm you, but it has to be addressed.
Well, I think our time is up for today. So I'd just like to thank Professor Cuello again for a very interesting talk. I think a round of applause is in order. And I'd like to thank the audience for attending. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for all the comments.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Sorry, before we go, I have a quick question. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to know, how do we gain access to this recording?
It will be posted on YouTube under the Wayne State Humanities Center's account.
Okay, great. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye, everybody.
Take care.
Bye, Jose.
Bye. Thank you.